It's finally finished, but we're still stuck in supernatural purgatory. This podcast is a rewatch of all 15 seasons and hopefully our way to finally escape this show.
Join us once a week for a fun, informal discussion on each episode and leave comments on any specific upcoming plot points you'd like us to discuss. Hello.
Hi. This week we're back at this bullhickey. this I don't know what you want to call this show with Dead Man's Blood.
Yep. Episode 20 of season 1.
Yes.
And it's making me question all my life choices. I think we should probably say up front, like we were speaking before we started recording today, and we're not in a good place with this episode.
I think Amy's in a worse place than I am. But yes, I probably will get to that. I mean, it's a John episode, so I'm never good with John episodes.
I hate this episode for a different reason. Spoilers for the finale of season 15.
Hate it. But so this week, the director was Tony Warby.
Yeah. Writer
credits are Catherine Humphreys and John Shaban.
Yeah, and so far I've enjoyed John Shaban's episodes.
Not this one, though.
Do you know what? Though actually, this episode, outside of the context of the rest of the show, was not a bad episode.
No, yeah, it was really story heavy.
Yeah,
but like in a weird way. Like it didn't feel like overpowering to be story heavy.
Yeah, I kind of get what you mean. It was like a Monster of the Week episode, but with story, and John's here.
I guess because sometimes with some shows, and I feel like Supernatural does this later on, it feels like the majority of the season is filler, and then everything happens in like the last 2 episodes or 3 episodes. Whereas this one, it feels like it's actually has been building up to this, rather than like it feels good that there's going to be 2 more episodes after this, not that there would just be like 1 more.
Yeah, definitely. Like the story has been building to this point. You're correct. It's almost like there was a plan.
Yeah, right. Instead of just scrambling. But,
yeah. I mean, this episode is quite highly rated on IMDb. It's got 8.5. Not many comments. Most people were just saying how happy they were that, because there are vampires in this episode, that they weren't, I don't know, like Twilight vampires. And actually sort of monsters, I guess. So, yeah, pretty well received, I think.
I'm a little surprised it's only 8.5. I would have thought maybe it'd be a bit higher. But maybe some people have come back to it. Yeah.
I think there must have been some people rewatching this episode like, oh, okay, I need to go back and look at that because I didn't realise this was as important as it was. It wasn't important. Okay.
No, it was not.
Let's get into it, because otherwise I'm just going to start crying and...
We're not going to get... We both have... I'm going to say this warning, but Amy does an amazing job editing us. So, but this might be a bit of a long one. I mean, you've already seen the time code, if it's going to be a long one or not. But
that's true.
We both have a lot of notes. A lot of notes were taken in this. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
So, we start in Manning, Colorado. And it says present day, but I don't really sure why they put that in there. But anyway, present day. And we're in a bar, and we just see this like elderly man who's kind of having a drink, scribbling in a notebook. And this is the first time we sort of see a hunter outside of the Winchesters. And you can kind of tell he's a hunter because of this, like the setup of the bar, and like he's got this same kind of journal. And he, like, you don't really see in the journal, but you can kind of see that it's got like symbols. Yeah. So you can kind of just assume.
Like I paused it, and there was some things about demons and possession in there, and that things were happening more frequently. But other than that, there wasn't anything else. Yeah,
I guess like it's just like a general, you got the vibe, right?
Yeah.
Because of what we've seen so far. And we learned that his name is, at least his last name is Elkins. from the bartender that's there, and she gives like a little backstory to another patron, and then like a group of people come in, and they gave off like alternate universe Buffy vibes. Do you remember that episode?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was just put like, oh, I guess they're kind of bikers, but no, that's so much better.
But Elkins is suspicious and basically disappears from the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so the bartender talks to the group and comes back, and it's just his shot glass is there, but he's not. He returns to his cabin. It's like a little bit frantic, I guess, and he's just walking through the house, and then the leader of the group, who's a lady, she turns up in his house and starts talking to him, and he just throws a knife at her heart, like straight down the middle.
Yeah. Her entrance reminded me of someone else's. I don't know. I was in a weird place today. Oh, Cass's. I don't know why.
How?
Just the knife, just the stabbing.
Okay.
This vampire is called Kate, who we find that out later on, if that's helpful.
She just says "damn" and like pulls the knife out of her chest. Wonderful. And then Elkins is running through the house. He's trying to get to this is one thing I don't quite understand with some of these like horror things. He could just run away. Like, she's not really impaired in any way, right? Because she pulls it out and she's just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he runs. It's like, surely she could run at the same time. Anyway, he runs away, gets into his like office and pushes like a cabinet in front of the door, goes to his safe, and he pulls out this really awesome looking gun. We don't know what it is yet, but we do know what it is. And then some more like human looking monsters fall through the like glass ceiling and hold him down. Kate comes through the door and the gun goes flying, and then he's killed.
They eat him.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like chomping sounds, like gruesome chomping sounds. And it's the title card.
So, do you think he took the gun out of the safe to try and shoot them, or because otherwise, why did he take the gun out of the safe?
I mean, that would be the only reason, surely.
Yeah.
But it seems like a little bit of a waste. And I'll get into why that's a little bit of a waste in, like, later on in this episode. But I don't know.
But I guess if he was going to use it to shoot them, maybe he didn't know exactly what they were. Because if he's writing in his journal about possession and stuff, maybe he thought they were something else. Because he was putting salt on his door. Anyway.
Oh, no, actually, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right with that. I only hesitate because of what she tells another vampire, like, a little bit later on in the episode. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting one. I just wonder why he took it out of the safe. Like, I think he thought they were demons rather than vampires.
I think you're right.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one too.
So we get the title card, and we cut to a diner, and Dean is reading a newspaper, Sam is on his laptop, and they're basically saying that there's no leads. They haven't been able to find a case, I guess, in a little while. And Dean suggests, why don't they head back east and go see Sarah again in New York? And Sam just deflects.
Completely deflects.
And says like, we've got a lot of work to do.
And it's like, but you can't find any cases, so what work have you got to do?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess we don't know how long it's been between that last episode and this episode, but I guess we were talking about timings before, and I think this has maybe been at least a month or two, because they've moved back over to the other side of the country, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So it's been at least a couple weeks, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Okay. Sam deflects anyway, and he finds the story about Elkins. Dean immediately recognises the name. He's sort of muttering it under his breath and stuff. And then he gets out John's journal and finds the page with his name on and his phone number and says, it's a Colorado area code. This isn't a coincidence, essentially.
Yeah, because this time Sam actually questions Dean and says, well, how do you know it could be the same person? But yes, so they are. I like this like brief transition that they did. Like it
Yeah.
had like a mountain, and then like it was so short. I was like, oh. But this episode is quite long, so
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't have lots of driving scenes. But they are breaking and entering again. This into. So we find out his name's Daniel Elkins. So
Yep.
they break into his house, and the jacket's back.
The jacket is back just in time.
Uh-huh. It's the only good thing about this episode. So Dean says something kind of interesting here. He says, do you think this guy Elkins was a player? So they don't refer to themselves as hunters yet.
No, you're right, actually. I don't think they've ever actually called themselves hunters.
And I think
funny.
it's after this episode.
Yeah, because it made me think of the Benders when they were like, oh, not like our usual playmates. And then they're calling him a player here. I don't know. I just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Not in any way connected. But yeah, it's weird because he's kind of still talking in code, even with Sam, and like there's no one else around. I guess it's just second nature to just not call it out. I mean, they find a journal of his that looks a lot like John's, like a lot like John's. And they said that it dates back to the sort of 1960s. So obviously he's been doing this. He's been a player for many, many years.
How old do you think Elkins is? Because I was placing him like close to, I don't know, 60s maybe? Not like super old, but like, so this is 2000. So the 60s would have been 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So he started hunting. Yeah, he would have started hunting when he was 20. Do you think?
Yeah, I reckon he was mid-60s. Yeah, judging by the actor that they chose.
So,
but it kind of gives a little insight into like hunting, I guess, because did he age out? Like, do you know what I mean? But he was clearly still hunting. He had like a journal. He still had all his stuff up on his wall. It looked like he was still hunting even into his like mid-60s.
But then, what the bartender says is like this old kook who lives up in the mount, like in a cabin in the woods. So he may be sort of semi-retired and like coming out of retirement because of like all the crazy stuff that's happening. Like, because I don't think any of them ever leave.
No.
But they just like slow down.
like keeping a track on it, like a Bobby figure, right? Bobby doesn't do that much hunting. But he does sort of like keep a track on things. It's a bit of a font of information.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would have liked to got to know his character a bit more because we haven't really met any other hunters yet in this season, and this is only a very brief look into his life, and he just seems like John.
I mean, so we kind of find out that it's kind of his mentor. So
yeah,
it makes sense.
So Dean is like walking around this office, and he kind of kicks the box that the cult was in, but doesn't really pay it much mind at that point. But he does find some scratches on the floor, and he does like a real smart thing. He like takes a bit of paper and like does a pencil rubbing of the scratches. Mm-hmm. And they find a location of a postbox, and they say this is something that John has done before to drop things off, I guess to them probably as well.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
I liked the next little like music scene because there wasn't any sound, like scene sounds, when they go to pick up the letter in the post box. It's just them like showing it to each other. I thought it was quite good, like quite dramatic.
Yeah, it's just like it was very boom boom boom. Like they were at the house, they were getting the mail, then they were in their car, and that was it.
They had to get through the plot points of this episode fairly quickly in the beginning.
They really did.
And it's a letter to JW. Who could it be? Yeah.
And they're like, should we open it? And then jump scare John appears.
Should we open it? Dad?
And Dean does a little scare. I thought you'd enjoy that. He's like, ah.
I did very much so.
John is like smiling, like it was funny that he scared them.
Wouldn't you be like a little bit disappointed that you managed to like sneak up on him?
A little bit, yeah. Like he definitely shouldn't have been able to. Also,
but
it's funny to sneak up on people.
Yeah, that's true.
That sounds really bad, but if you know them, and they're in on the joke.
Yeah. And it's not like every single time. Like once in a while, it's kind of fun to do.
Exactly.
For sure. I'm pretty sure I've done it to you, like when we've met up in London.
I'm sure you have.
Or you've done it to, like, even you could even do it by accident sometimes, because if you're not paying attention, and they just then they're suddenly in front of you, like, oh, hi.
Yeah, I'm a pretty quiet walker sometimes. Does that make sense?
So John gets in the back seat and he tells him that he's also on the case because Elkins was a mentor to him. And they said that they found this letter. He opens it, and then like John compliments Dean.
Oh, I wrote this down as well.
Nice job of covering your tracks, by the way. Well, we learned from the best.
It's kind of cool, but then he turns around and says, "We learned from the best." I'm like, did you though? Did you though?
Yeah.
I don't think you did. I mean, okay, John's a good hunter, I suppose, but like, is he though? Is he the best?
I
don't
want
think
to
so.
bring up something about that in a minute, but Dean's little like smirk when John says "good job." Just tell your kids you're proud of them. Do
Please.
it often, because then they don't grow up into adults who need constant approval.
Yeah, that would sort out a lot of issues for sure. So John tells the boys that he had a falling out with his mentor. He never says what over, but going by conversations later on in the seasons with different people, I'm gonna guess it's about Sam and Dean.
Mm-hmm.
Because he probably, like, Elkins is probably like, hey, they're too young to be learning how to hunt. And John was probably like, nah, they're my boys. They're going to learn to hunt.
Even in this episode, it's kind of brought up, isn't it, when he's talking to Sam later on about protecting each other and not being vulnerable. And we know Bobby has that issue with John, so...
Yeah, that's where I was going with it, yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that other older hunters would have the same issue. Because they know the life, they know what it's like. And they kind of, if you think about all these hunters that we meet who do, get to an older age, they're like all alone.
Yeah, but there you go, that's John.
Exactly. So you're right, maybe it was something to do with that, the reason they fell out, or difference in opinion over hunting generally.
I guess I'm equating Elkins to Bobby a lot in this, just because that's the only like other mentoral figure that ever really comes up. I feel like sometimes Bobby really didn't like John.
Like
anyway, we'll get into that one when Bobby she's introduced into the series, but yeah, let's carry on. So in the letter it said that Elkins has found the Colt and this legendary gun. And he asks them if they found it at the house. And they said, Dean says, well, there was a box, but no gun. And then John becomes like frantic and it's like starts to basically bark orders at them.
Yeah.
And Sam is being Sam and it's like, what are the questions? Like, he's asking a whole bunch of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually kind of a little shocked that John answered the questions rather than just like leaving and sort of letting them follow, because he tells them that they're hunting vampires. Something about Dean's face and Dean and vampires just makes me laugh just because of what happened. But like his
funny.
It is funny. It's hilarious. Not what the vampire you're thinking of. Okay, I'm thinking of the other one.
Yeah, okay,
I'm thinking of the other one. That's where my brain was going with this. I think I've just repressed 1520. Let's be real. Yeah. I did not think about it at all until like the very end of this episode.
Oh, I was thinking about it this whole time. Dean's reaction was, I don't know, disbelief that vampires exist. I guess because John had told him that they hadn't.
Yeah, because he believes that they were all extinct.
Vampires? I thought there was no such thing.
You never even mentioned them, Dad.
I thought they were extinct. I thought Elkins and others had wiped them out. I was wrong.
Here's a question, about to get real salty. About 1520, so just like for a second. This is the first of many. If John thought that vampires were extinct, why was there an entry about vampires that cut out people's tongues in John's journal in 1520?
You're right.
I'm not the first person to have said this. This isn't coming out of just my head. Like, other people have brought this up.
So, well, the thing is, he says that Elkins was an expert, so maybe he learned that when he was with Elkins.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. the vampire mimes. Oh, just...
But, like, that doesn't explain anything else about 1520. Not at all. We'll bring it up, but it doesn't. Now I have many, many questions.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. I'm glad you brought it up because I did think about it because, like I said, I actively try not to remember that episode.
Yeah.
So, like, even the flashback that was in that, I forgot was in this episode, obviously. And I was just like, oh.
Because, I don't know if I want to go into this now, but because story-wise, this is an important episode, but it didn't stick in my brain compared to other important plot points that has been through the seasons.
Yeah, like, this is important to hunting knowledge and the first sort of major arc of the series.
Yeah.
Outside of that, it's really not that important.
It's not entirely that important. Yeah, so that was my first thing for this, because we're talking about John being a good hunter. I mean, he says that he thinks that vampires are, well, he thought that vampires were extinct. I mean, I guess he knows all the lore around them though, because okay, all right, I'll go on this. He probably learned that from other hunters, which might be why this is in his journal. Mm-hmm. But I'm surprised that he would have such a comprehensive knowledge if he doesn't think that they exist anymore. Why would you fill your brain up with useless knowledge?
Right. And he obviously recognizes how to find vampires as well.
Yeah. So
did you not look out? So, okay, I'll bring this up as well. There's something not quite right about John. And to me, it's pointed out in this episode really, really clearly. We're not there yet. Let's get there, and I'll say exactly what I mean. Okay. By that. So John starts to give a bit of a breakdown as to what vampires are. All the while, he's giving sort of like a narration, while the group of vampires that we saw earlier at the bar are like drinking and by the side of the road and are about to pick up some new prey. There's a couple driving in the car that we saw in the distance, and they're just having a normal conversation. And then they see a body that's in the middle of the road, and he slams on the brakes. The woman of the couple rings the police while the man gets out to try and help, and then the vampire attacks. The teeth were different in this, right? It wasn't my imagination. Like, because the animation of it was the same, but like the way that the sort of the formation of the teeth, I feel like was different. Because I think of when later on they're like much more shark-ish, or like, yeah. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
I think they had the basic idea down of how they wanted vampire teeth to look. They come out of the same like place, like just in the like gum above the front teeth. But I think you're right. Later on, when they probably refined the process of getting this to work properly, they were like sharper, I think.
Yeah.
So they look different, but I think the basic idea in there, I think it's just execution. They haven't had enough practice doing this yet.
Yeah, definitely. And really, we don't really see them. This is the only sort of vampire transformation we actually see in the episode, because I guess it, like, again, they don't have the budget, and that's a lot of like CGI. And like the practical change was not great. They look like fake teeth.
They do. I don't mind them though. I like that it's different, at least, because one thing I really like about this episode is that we think we know everything there is to know about vampires because of Buffy and like everything else. And I do like that Supernatural really changed the lore on vampires quite a lot.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, they kind of made their own breed of vampires. So I guess we could talk about what he says, because he says that they're not afraid of crosses. You can't stake them in the heart, and they can be out in daylight.
Exactly. I think there is maybe some things that they drop a little bit later on, because it says that like sunlight's like a bad sunburn to them, but I feel like we see vampires out in the daylight more later on in the seasons. So I think there's a couple of things that maybe they do shift around later on, but I'm not mad about it. I do think vampires and Supernatural are cool.
When it becomes less black and white, yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, they're not so bad.
They're very, in this episode, it's very Lost Boys, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely that vibe. So yeah, they've captured this couple. We go back to the cabin, and John is listening to police radio while Sam and Dean are sleeping, and he hears this kind of come over the radio, and he wakes them up to go and investigate.
It's the vampires.
How do you know?
Just follow me, okay?
Vampires. It's funnier every time I hear it.
Okay, so in their universe, we know that movies and things exist in the same as our universe. So I'm guessing like...
Well, Buffy the Vampire does exist. Because
Of course it does.
What would Buffy do? Like...
Yeah, of course it does. Oh my gosh. Dean so watched Buffy.
He did. Absolutely did. I mean, come on. He's all about that lost boy life.
Oh,
like, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. I like that he's having some kind of like internal like, why is it like, how are these real? Like, what is our life kind of thing.
He's having a bit of a crisis.
Yeah, having a bit of a crisis about the fact that vampires exist. He didn't think they did. I think that's funny. Maybe he's realizing that he is Buffy.
Or he wants to be.
Yeah. Oh man, there should have been so many more Buffy references in Supernatural. Makes me mad there wasn't now.
I mean, there's a reason for it, because they came out too close together that people would have just sort of turned it off and be like, oh, but it's just Buffy, but with men. So I think...
Why did Sarah Michelle Gellar never do a guest appearance on Supernatural?
James Masters does, and
Charisma.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I can't believe I forgot her name. So they make an appearance.
That's true. Yeah, I guess that's as close to Buffy Supernatural crossover as we were ever going to get. But
yeah.
I would have loved Dean meeting like whatever character they got Sarah Michelle Gellar to play, like a hunter.
Can you imagine though if it was like Charlie and Buffy?
Oh, that would have been so good. That would have been so good. They make a joke how she kind of looks like Buffy but isn't. I don't know. It would.
Yeah.
I'm just making this up in my head. I love it. Can someone write it, please?
We will promote it. We will definitely promote it.
Yeah, Buffy Supernatural crossovers, please and thank you. So John's kind of taking the lead. He's properly ordering them around, and the whole time Sam is just like, "Why?
Not having it.
Just, why? What do you mean? Explain to us, please." I mean, fair enough, because...
How else are they going to learn? Like, they've never encountered vampires before. They have no knowledge. Mm-hmm. And yet, John's over here telling them exactly what to do, but, like, not explaining how each of these things will affect them hunting a vampire. Now that they know vampires exist in the world, they need to know how to kill them, right?
Exactly. And Sam's completely right. Like, he keeps them in the dark a lot about things. Just like, do this, do that. No explanation. Frustrating. Mm-hmm. They go to the crime scene, which is on the side of the road, and John goes over to talk to the police. Like, we don't get to see that. Like, see how he cons his way into getting information. And it's just, like, leaving Sam and Dean to sort of watch him do this is just... It's... We know they're capable. We've seen them work cases. And Sam's right. He's treating them like children who don't know what they're doing. I do have thoughts on this because... I mean, me and you are both older now. And when I left for university and then when I came back, I had to live with my family again for a few months after I'd had my freedom. And I love my family, but it was hard because it's exactly like going back into sort of your childhood, you know?
It really is. I don't know how it is for you because I know you moved a little bit growing up, so like I stayed in the same house, so every time, even when I go home to visit for 2 weeks, I'm like 10 again. I'm like, how did this happen? And what's even crazier is it's even crazier to see it with my older brother who has kids, and it's just like, how did he turn back to being 10 but have 2 children? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's very, very bizarre.
You do find, like, butt heads with your parents when you go back to live with them as an adult because you have your own way of doing things, and they just don't... I think parents, and I'm sure it's true, I don't think your parents can ever see you as fully grown up. I don't think so either. I just don't think they do. They always see you as their kids. So I get where the friction is with Sam and John. I do understand it. I think that like with Dean, I don't know if he ever went through that phase of like butting heads with John. I think he's still he hasn't had his independence to then see what it's like when he doesn't have it in the same way that Sam does. Even though Sam's been questioning John for like the majority of their interactions, he's actually taking it pretty well. Like he's actually giving them answers rather than just like because I say so. He's obviously irritated by that, but he's not angry about it yet. Yeah, I think maybe that's just Sam though. Like part of me thinks, can you imagine him as a little kid, like them going from place to place? I see Sam as that kid just be like, why? That's true. So maybe it's kind of like that as well. That just might be their dynamic and has always been their dynamic also. That's true. It's just gotten more fraught as Sam's got older. Yeah. I didn't like this next bit because as John walks back, like he questions Dean about how he's looking after the Impala.
Hey, and Dean, why don't you touch up your car before you get rust? I wouldn't have given you the damn thing if I thought you were going to ruin it.
Do you think this is what caused Dean to like change his views on like and start calling the Impala baby? Because after like he starts caring for the car. You know, he's like daddy's good little soldier. So what do you think?
I mean, maybe. I'm still like, to me it just seems like a dig, like for no reason. Yeah. Because I think Dean does look after that car. Like I know it's dusty and a little bit dirty at the moment, but they've been driving from place to place non-stop. And I think it's just a dig. It's like, again, it's like when you come home with a new haircut and your mum's like, oh, yes, you made that decision.
No, yeah. It's that disappointment.
Yeah, it's that energy of like, oh, okay, you're doing it like that, are you? All right, yeah, okay, fine. So I felt sad for Dean here because he hadn't done anything to like attract his kind of ire. Like he was just stood there and decided to like read him for the car.
But Sam's face of like, it's like, oh, you got in trouble.
That's true. Like, yeah,
it's hilarious. It was very, very good. Maybe, I mean, John is childish. Let's be real. So maybe instead of taking out his frustration on Sam, because he knows that something like a blow up will happen if he confronts it, he kind of redirects his agitation to Dean in the car
because he knows he'll just take it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Sam and Dean are driving along and they're kind of discussing vampires again. They're saying that they sort of hunt in packs of sort of 8 to 10. They generally have a nest and they take their victims alive to drain them later. Then Dean kind of starts addressing the tension that is between Sam and John. And because he said this a couple of times, like, oh, it's starting. Like, yeah, just in the background, like, oh, it's starting up again. So I guess this is what it was like before Sam left. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. And Sam's saying, like, well, you know, he treats us like children.
It's just the way he treats us like we're children. Oh, God. He barks orders at us, Dean. He expects us to follow him without question. Yeah. He keeps us on some crap need-to-know deal.
He does what he does for a reason.
What reason?
Our job. There's no time to argue. There's no margin for error, all right? It's just the way the old man runs.
Yeah, well, maybe that worked when we were kids, but not anymore, all right?
Dean says, like, it's just the way it is.
Okay, before we get any further, I'm going to have to ruin our mood completely. Because don't you think that Dean is completely different in this episode? Like, he has no personality. Absolutely none. He's less boisterous. He's not making jokes. Like, he made one joke, but nobody was in the room. Completely not him. Like, in the last episode, he was super goofy and, like, you know, kind of messing with Sam. In Hell House, we saw him, like, be angry and annoyed with like the general public, and then but like this he has nothing. He's just like he's a blank slate. Like, he doesn't say anything.
And like, they must have known what they were doing writing him like that, because this episode is clearly directly after Provenance, because they mention Sarah, and exactly. the difference in character between then and now is it's absolutely crazy. And it's completely to do with John. It's weird that he's the same even around Sam while John is about as well. Mm-hmm. He just goes into soldier mode.
He does. And like, so Sam sort of at the end of their like kind of argument conversation, he says,
I mean, are you telling me you're cool with just falling into line and letting him run the whole show?
That's what it takes.
he's willing to like give himself up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God. Yeah, he's willing to give himself up to make peace. And it's just like, you shouldn't have to. Like, he
No.
has a personality. Like, I don't know. But then I got to thinking, can you imagine what the show, like Supernatural, the show, would have been like if John was around for all of it?
No.
It would be awful. And I was just trying to think of like sort of like the French Mistake with John in it. Like, it would be so weird. It wouldn't
That
make
would have been
sense.
so good though. Can you imagine if they'd met, like Jeffrey Dean Morgan, a complete opposite to John Winchester, obviously, and just been like,
and, like,
really friendly and outgoing. I think Dean would have had some kind of aneurysm.
That's very true.
That would have been so
Very, very
good.
true.
So we cut back to the vamp nest, and they're taunting that couple. Okay, the couple is a guy and a girl. I don't think, and I may be wrong, that girl's name is ever said in this episode. But
I don't think it was.
I don't think it was, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay, I don't know when it was said. But this is Jenny and Jenny's boyfriend. Again, he doesn't have a name. He's not credited. And they're kind of taunting them, you know, just generally being dickish. And they take away Jenny's boyfriend and we see him get eaten. And the main vampire, Kate, is waiting for Luther to come back, who's kind of, I think, the head of the pack. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I would think so.
And when he arrives, they obviously have a thing going on, and she shows him the gun that they got, the Colt. And it's funny, actually, because he kind of seems like annoyed that they took the gun and killed Elkins, because from what she says, like, oh, I think this gun was made the same time, you know, you were. So he's a fairly old vampire, so I guess he's seen his fair share of things. He kind of realizes that they killed a hunter. There's probably going to be more hunters on the way, and this gun wasn't worth it. I think it's really interesting that he says,
Revenge isn't worth much if you end up dead.
It's a very accented point because there's like a kind of a long pause after that.
yeah.
And I wrote, I wouldn't have been surprised if he looked at the camera and winked.
Like, pay attention.
Yeah. In other vampire stories, this idea of revenge, that's their story. It's always about revenge. But this is the first one that's kind of like, no, revenge isn't worth it. Like, just leave him alone.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting. I like this episode in the way I think it kind of starts to blur those lines between black and white and good and evil kind of thinking that they have. Yeah, and I think this is the start of it with Luther and Kate. So Dean gets a call from John as they're driving, and he just tells Sam to pull off at the next exit. And Sam's like, why though? Why? And he's just like, just do it. Like, Dad has a lead and Sam has had it. Whatever it was, he's had it, because he pulls in front of John's truck, like overtakes him, and then swings the car around, so John has to stop and get out.
Yeah. It's kind of dangerous, actually. Not even kind of. It is very dangerous. I mean, it's a good way to start a conversation or confrontation.
Oh, crap. Here we go. Sam? What the hell is that? We need to talk. About what? About everything.
For this next section, I am totally on Sam's side. May not be the right time and place, but it's definitely a conversation that they should have been having, or should have had, at some point.
Exactly. I like the way the confrontation was framed. So there's Sam on one side, John on the other, and Dean in the middle.
I mean, I don't. I mean, last week we were talking about how fun it is to watch, like, in the background Dean, but this one was not. This was not fun to watch. This was like helplessness. I was just like, no, I'm so sorry. But basically, Sam demands answers to very reasonable questions. He wants to know about why the cult is so important, why it's okay to hunt together now after the events of Shadow. I mean, John doesn't give an answer. He's just like, because I tell you to.
No, obviously something big is going down, and we want to know what.
Get back in the car.
No.
I said get back in the damn car.
Yeah, and I said no. All right, you made your point, tough guy. Look, we're all tired. We can talk about this later. Sammy, I'm here. Come on.
Because I tell you to. Like, that's why I'm saying that he's very childish. He doesn't answer anything. And then Dean manages to sort of pull Sam away. But then Sam makes a comment under his breath.
This is why I left in the first place.
And said, this is why you left. And the rage. Oh my goodness, the rage. I was like, talk about acting.
What'd you say?
You heard me. Yeah, you left. Your brother and me, we needed you. You walked away, Sam. You walked away. Stop it, Bo. You're the one who said don't come back, Dad. You're the one who closed that door, not me. You were just pissed off. You couldn't control me anymore. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. That's enough. Me you too.
I felt that in my bones. I'm not gonna lie. I was a little bit afraid of Sam at this point because he was angry. What he says when he's angry was very, again, like, it's very teenagerish.
Mm-hmm.
But then they haven't managed to get past being teenage son and adult dad. Like, it's still there. Sorry, I'm getting, like, this makes me mad, so I'm kind of trying to not get mad. So Sam says, this is why I left, under his breath.
Yeah.
And then John responds, yeah, you did leave when we needed you.
Yeah.
And it's like, but he's not listening to them now. Like, John is not listening to them now, saying, like, you need us, we need to be with you. And John's like, no, I'm leaving now. I can see why Sam is so frustrated.
And the thing is, like, Sam left, like, years ago. It was years ago. It was, like, over 2 years ago that they had this argument, and it's still not resolved. Like, John can't forgive him for leaving. He must understand. He's a fairly young... He's a young man. So weird to say. You need to sometimes, like, leave the nest. And I guess it was a difficult, like, separation. But you should be expecting that as a parent. And, I mean... I'm not fully with Dean on this. Like, he takes John's side in this argument just with his actions. You know, I think he doesn't say anything, but he's so upset this is happening.
He kind of does, though. Finally, when, like, you know, Sam said his piece and goes back to the car. Actually, no, Dean physically gets in between them and tells him that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sam gets into the car. He turns around and tells John, that includes you.
Oh,
it's
yes.
you too.
So right at the end, he does. Yeah, he like squares up to John.
John's face is like, he's actually shocked.
The first bit of that argument, I feel like Dean was on John's side, kind of, because Sam had like done a dangerous maneuver in the car and basically got out shouting. As they walked kind of away, then John got angry, and then I think Dean shifted more towards Sam's defense.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense because Dean is all about family.
Mm-hmm.
John was the causing of them breaking up, basically.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Sam left, yes, but John told him not to come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you tell a teenager not to come back, they're going to take you at your word.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, this argument was a long time coming. I think it was needed. There were some things said here that needed to be said. I hate confrontation. If anybody knows me, like, I hate it. I will do anything. I'll go out of my way to avoid confrontation. But sometimes you need to clear the air.
Yeah, definitely.
As well, I think. There's a better, healthier way to do it than this at the side of a road.
Yeah.
Okay, so after that, we cut back to the barn, and I just put Kate and Luther are getting frisky. I think they decided before, when they ate Jenny's boyfriend, that they were going to turn Jenny. So to do that, Luther cuts Kate's arm, and then I'm going to call it out what it is. It's clearly assault. And so she like puts the blood in her mouth and then kisses Jenny to turn her, to make her like drink the blood, I guess. So
I was just this abrupt like scene change kind of, it threw me for a loop, for one. And then I got to thinking, like, where did this sexy vampire trope come from?
So
because
true.
If you think about it, like, the first vampire that was ever on screen was Nosferatu, right? I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The silent movie. Now we have, like, Angel, The Lost Boys, that we've mentioned, Queen of the Damned. There's also Twilight, but nah. When did that shift happen to... Because even, like, Dracula in was it Christopher Lee played Dracula?
I blame Bela Lugosi, who played Dracula. I don't think it was intentionally sexy, but I think there's a certain aesthetic there that people appreciate. Yeah, I guess in Supernatural they made them look like people, so it's, you know, dependent on what you find attractive in a person. But
I mean, like, you know, these two like getting it on, they're all like partying and stuff, so it's just kind of like, well, where did that even come from?
I don't know. I think I blame the Lost Boys for this particular episode. I don't know. I'm a bit disappointed that the first same-sex kiss on Supernatural was this, with all the like non-consensual blood giving. That's disappointing to me. But yeah, so we see Jenny. I mean, it doesn't show her turning into a vampire or anything. It's implied that that's something that they're doing, I think, and they're leaning heavily on people's prior knowledge of vampires to know that you can turn people into vampires in this universe as well. Because they never mentioned that otherwise. I mean, so it's daytime. We see Dean, Sam, and John hiding in some bushes watching the vampire barn. Again, they said, like, this is where they say, you know, the sun is like gives them a really bad sunburn, so they don't like it. They can go out in it, which means that they sleep during the day. So essentially, like, that's going to be their time to strike. John mentions here as well that the best way to kill a vampire is to behead them.
Oh, well, that's the only way, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true. The only way, which is important. They have this whole scene with, like, both their trunks open to see all the guns and stuff. And, like, John's trunk is just so much cooler than theirs. It's, like, a whole, like, automated open thing. And all his guns are in foam. And, like, Dean says, like, oh, you know, I've got a spare machete, Dad. And he's like, no, I have one. His is cooler and shinier.
Dad, I got an extra machete if you need one.
I think I'm okay. Thanks.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like 3 feet long, where theirs is like only a foot long.
Yeah. Are they making a dick joke here? Was that what that was?
I hope not, because that's kind of awkward.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, is that what you're doing? Because that's strange. I guess it just shows, like, John's experience and that he's, like, so much a better hunter than them. But to be fair, he gave them that car, so...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, do they not get the upgrade? Like, what?
Exactly.
But at the same time, like, okay, yeah, John's, like, looks cool, but I don't think it holds as much, like, kind of stuff as the Impala. Like, because the Impala, I feel like they can go back there and, like, for any kind of monster, they'll have the tool or, like, something that they can make to then have the tool to hunt the monster. Yeah. Whereas John maybe doesn't.
So, just to go into my own little analysis of this, where I'm talking about cars as people, like, the John's truck with the trunk of it is very, like, clean, clinical. There's no extra stuff. There's no emotion in it, you know? Whereas, like, Sam and Dean's trunk, it doesn't just hold their weapons, right? It's got all their stuff in it, like their bags, their clothes. Mm-hmm. It's their whole life is in that trunk. That's why it's messy. That's why it's kind of, you know, a little bit haphazard. Whereas, yeah, John's is very, this is just about hunting. And there's nothing else in this trunk. Just that's true. I think it's a metaphor. I think the trunks are a metaphor. So John finally tells them about the cult here as well. Like, he kind of, it's almost like he tells them like he's doing them a favor by telling them, I feel, with all this information.
They say this gun can kill anything.
Kill anything like supernatural anything?
Like the demon.
He asks, so you want to know about the cult? And it's actually Sam who responds, yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, he does want to know.
And, I mean, yeah, he does want to know. But, like, has changed his tune a little bit. But I guess because he knows who his father is. So he's like, well, I guess I have to answer appropriately, as it were.
And if he'd responded any other way, would have John then told them? You know?
Probably not. Probably not.
So he says that it was made in 1835, and there were loads of other stuff going on at the same time. I think he said, like, Halley's Comet and the Alamo, and maybe something else as well. And Samuel Colt made a gun for a hunter when hunters were on horseback, which is kind of cool.
This is the first time that hunter is used in this context.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
At least that is my understanding. Haha, maybe from now on they will be called hunters.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I like that a lot. So I kind of like the Wild West hunter idea. I think that's pretty wicked. And he made 13 bullets, and I'm gonna keep track. I've decided of the bullets in this gun, as far as I can. So it says he used half a dozen, so that generally means 6. So if he's used 6 bullets, let's do the maths. That means there's 7 bullets left in this gun, or for this gun, right? And he said that it can kill anything. And then, so, you know, Sam says, oh, well, he makes a connection. It's like, oh, the demon. Like, you want this to kill the demon. Yeah, that's why John wants it. He said it took a lot of research, a lot of finding, but he finally found a way to end the demon. Which is just, it's funny to me now, because I'm like, they kill demons on the wreck. Like,
all the time.
All the time. I know we get to see John again, like, in, you know when. And I just wish, it was nice, but I kind of wish that they'd had more of a moment with, like, him being impressed with them, you know?
Yeah. Because like, they did a lot. They have done a lot since this, like, series arc.
Exactly.
Like, how many times have they saved the world?
Show him the knife that you just stab a demon in it.
Or the angel blade. Or any of it.
I mean, how many angel blades do they have lying around in the bunker? Like, it's just...
Too many.
Cass keeps stealing them from heaven. Like, stop.
I think he does. I think he does. Okay. I need to go back to the beginning of the episode, but I'm going to guess that this revolver is like most standard revolvers in that it takes 6 bullets.
Yeah.
So there should be 1 left over because we saw that Elkins loaded the gun completely. Mm-hmm. So there should be 1 just like laying around somewhere.
Oh,
but it wasn't in the box. So where is it?
I don't know if they have it or not. Oh, this is messing up my count.
For sure.
I'll keep the count and we'll see. It's just because I get funny with these things because it sticks in my mind. There's a YouTube video that someone made which is amazing, and go watch it, of all the times they fire the torpedoes in Voyager, and they very distinctly at the beginning of that series say they only have a certain amount, and they went over by at least 200. So you should go watch that because it's really great. Yeah, it's good. So we see them sneaking into this barn to go and hunt these vampires, and they've gone in through a window, very sneaky. It's all very creeping around. The vampires are in hammocks, and there's like a typical bit where like Dean nudges one of them and it swings slightly harder, but it's fine. And Sam finds Jenny tied up, and Dean finds some other people like locked in a cage.
This is what I mean by John has issues.
Okay.
Because Sam and Dean are ingrained that they hunt to save and help people. Mm-hmm. But John, I mean, I guess we don't really see it on screen, so maybe he said something. But his instinct is just to go straight for the gun. Like, he is selfish. Mm-hmm. He wants that gun to do what he wants, and nobody else matters. Whereas Sam and Dean, they didn't go looking for the gun. As soon as they saw some people in distress, they went to those people.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really a good point, because he was very focused. Like, he went straight to where he thought it would be. Whereas they definitely tried, you know, even at the risk of waking up all the vampires, Dean was trying to, like, open that cage. Mm-hmm. And Sam was talking to Jenny. I mean, ultimately, I guess that's what gets them into trouble, though, right? Because Jenny wakes up and sort of screams at Sam because she's a vampire now. I don't know what the lesson is there.
Well, I think it's just an interesting, like, look at their characters. Like, how are you saying their cars are, like, clinical? Like, John is very clinical and is, like, he's about helping himself.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't, at no point in this episode does he talk about helping those people that are stuck there in the nest.
That's a good point, actually. Like, they're not doing that to save these people that are still there, and that they know are there. Like, you know, there's no way that Dean would have left that barn and not told them that there were like 4 people stuck in a cage in the bag.
Yeah.
I think so. John doesn't manage to get the gun here because they start to wake up, and he shouts like, "Boys, run!" and they all run out. So Sam and Dean get out of the barn, and John comes out and follows them. There's a little pause where you're like, "Oh, did he get out?" But he's fine. And they decide that they're going to wait for nighttime. But I'm not sure why they're waiting for night. I guess the vampires are onto them now, so it has to be soon. Maybe they're not expecting them to come at nighttime. It's fair enough. So
yeah,
he said that the vampires have their scent, and they'll never stop tracking them now.
Because they have the scent for life.
Yeah, which I'm not sure is brought back up again, but maybe it is.
Maybe it is.
Okay. And he sends Dean to a funeral home. And like the one bit of comedic value in this is the look that Sam and Dean give each other when he says that.
Yeah, because he's super cryptic about it again. He's just like, we need to go to a funeral home, and they're like, what? What's that even mean?
Okay. So Sam and John are back at the cabin, and Sam is worrying over Dean. And this is one time where John actually like shows some faith in Dean. He's like, you know, he's got it. He'll be fine. And it's like, can you please say that to Dean at some point? To just tell him that you trust him. And it just solves so many issues. Just one time. But he can only say it to Sam, I guess. So I guess this is kind of John apologizing a little bit for their interactions up to this point. Because John tells Sam about a college fund that he set up when he was born, where he'd like put $100 in a month, and he'd done the same for Dean as well. He didn't actually want this life for them. You know, he's kind of saying like, you know, this wasn't the plan. Mm-hmm. And Sam makes a really good point. He's like, so if you did this, why did you get mad when I left? Like, this is what you wanted me to do. You know.
After your mother passed, all I saw was evil everywhere. And all I cared about was keeping you boys alive. I wanted you prepared, ready. So somewhere along the line, I stopped being your father. And I became your drill sergeant. So when you said that you wanted to go away to school, all I could think about, my only thought was that you were going to be alone. Vulnerable. Sammy, it never occurred to me what you wanted.
It makes me wonder how long John paid into that college fund for Sam, because he was pretty little when Mary died.
So he also said that he did one for Dean. Dean was 4 years old. Mm-hmm. So that there would have been a substantial amount in Dean's one, at least.
He's kind of saying, he is apologizing because he says like, you know, I care about you. And after all the stuff that we went through, I was worried about you being alone and like vulnerable. You know, that they had to stick together essentially, to be safe. But then he does say like, I stopped being your father and became a drill sergeant. So I guess at least John knows that he's doing this.
Yeah.
Which is something.
It's something, but it's also like, okay, you recognize it now, so are you going to change it?
Yeah.
Otherwise it doesn't matter and it doesn't mean anything. If you apologize and you just go back to being the drill sergeant. Exactly.
Like John says, like, you know, we're just different people. You know, maybe we don't get on. Kind of what he's saying is because we're different people. You know, Sam wanted different things. The thing that Dean wants and things that John wants, so they're different people. But Sam says, like, I don't think we are that different, not anymore. Because Sam understands John now in a way that Dean kind of never will, almost.
Yeah.
Because he lost Jessica.
But again, this kind of comes back to what we were talking about last week. Like, were they on the verge of marrying? Having a family together? Like, that, was it that strong of a relationship that he really truly understands what John went through? Not that like I'm defending John at this point, because I still think he's a terrible person. But like, I don't know. It feels very strange to equate Mary and Jessica in such like easy terms.
I mean, I get it because, you know, they're young. It's probably like a very intense relationship, you know?
Yeah.
But I was saying it's different, like the length of years. I guess he's just seeing where John is coming from. Maybe he understands more about his need for revenge. And this is a point that's been made, and like thanks for one of our listeners. They sent in a really nice, like, long comment about sort of Sam and Mary and John and Dean, which I completely agree with. That Sam has always been equated more with John, and Dean with Mary in their personalities.
Definitely.
And I think you see it more when we see Mary later. But here it's definitely very clear to me that although Dean tries to like emulate John and like dress like him and be like him, actually in reality Sam is closer to John than he's ever going to be.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's also another reason why, like, when you get two personalities that are similar, sometimes they just do not get along.
Absolutely.
And this is exactly what it is. This is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's the men of letters versus like the hunters, which comes up like when we meet the Campbells.
Yeah.
That whole deal, like, so we see the Campbells in Dean, and we see the men of letters or the Winchesters in Sam.
Yeah. It's right. You're right. Like, it completely solidifies that theory, I think.
Yeah.
That whole bit. Yeah,
So,
you're right.
That's not written at this point, so it's not like that was developed rather than sort of coincidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, but it's sort of that they must have been aware of that dynamic in order to write that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's clearly it's canon.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk here about, like, Sam asked John what happened to the college fund, and he's like, "Oh, I spent it on ammo," and they like laugh about it. But I was just like, you kind of got to laugh about that, or else you'd be really upset.
Yeah, you really would be. You really would be, because as I actually wrote, John is not very good with money, because like they have to like scam people now to get by. So it's like, well, you know, you could have like at least kept one of those funds and like invested it.
Yeah, or something. Oh, I don't know. I guess it's like you know, if you need ammo, you need ammo to go hunt something. So
yeah, that's true.
I made myself sad because I was like, look, I can have a bit of sympathy for John Winchester. I know, but I believe that he kind of did want more for his sons, and I know he dragged them around in this life. But I imagine it was a very sad moment for him the first time he had to withdraw from that college fund to buy ammo. Do you think it was a decision that he wrestled with? Or
no, not at all. No. Maybe a little bit. He probably did. Like, obviously it weighs on his mind because like he remembers what he did with it. Otherwise he would have been like, here's another thought though. Would he have said that to like break the tension? Because obviously right now it's like very serious. Yeah. So in reality, did he actually spend it on like provision, like just regular provisions like food, clothes and stuff like that? Yeah. But he said ammo just to be like, haha, I spent it on ammo because that's what you expect of me, kind of thing. Yeah,
you're probably right. But I mean more in the sense like, you know, when he took the money out for the hunting, I guess it could be anything. It must have been a moment that like, oh, this is the life I've chosen now. They're not going to go to college. Like, you know? It's sad. It's sad.
I think he probably had that moment when he had to close out the account rather than the first time that he took money out, because that is definitely saying like, this is the end. Like I will not be providing for them to go to college. Which
you could keep telling yourself
that's
like, oh, when we kill the demon, I'll just replace that money. You know? Oh
yeah.
No, and it just went on and on and on. I have a little bit of sympathy for John Winchester, and I know.
No, I mean, it's fine.
A little bit.
You can, but I don't. One of us has to, right?
One of us has to. I just think it makes an interesting character, right? Even in complex characters, I think you have to try and see things from their point of view sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
You do. This conversation did like lessen my hatred, but it's still. I say hatred. I don't really. Well, I do, but I don't. So like it did a valiant effort of getting you on John's side, but there's just still too much. Like he's not ever gonna really make up. So
exactly, yeah. It's not enough, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, Dean arrives and he's got dead man's blood. I mean, they don't say that's what it is, but he went to a funeral home and he has blood. So I mean, what else is it? And we cut to nighttime, and Dean's under the hood of the Impala, like looking like he's fixing something. And Kate the vampire comes up and she kind of propositions him, I guess. She's like, do you want to come back to my place? And he's lying here.
Car trouble? Let me give you a lift. Take you back to my place.
I'll pass. I usually draw the line in necrophilia.
Ooh.
Obviously, he gives away the fact that he knows they're vampires. So she hits him. She grabs his face, like, smushes it, and kisses him.
Smushes his cheeks.
Yeah.
She has a thing about consent. She is not a good person.
It's not a good person. Like the kissing without consent is...
And it's not like, it wasn't even like a peck on the cheek. No, it was a full-on, like, let me suck out your lungs through your mouth type deal.
Yeah, it was not great. I mean, and of course, because this is what Dean does in any tense situation, he makes another joke.
Sorry. I don't really stay with a chick that long. Definitely not eternity.
He did the same thing in like the Benders and stuff, where he's like in a very serious situation. I mean, in this case, I guess he was the bait. And I mean, of course he's the bait. Sam wasn't going to be the bait, was he?
No, not at all.
They get hit with arrows or dart.
They're arrows.
Arrows, yeah. And they kind of like, the vampires kind of like brush it off, like, this isn't going to hurt us. But then John comes and explains that it's dead man's blood, so it's poisonous to them, essentially. And they take Kate, and John beheads the other vampire. Though you don't see it, it's kind of off screen.
And I don't know why that, it made me shudder just seeing it happen off screen. Because when it happens on screen later on, obviously the reason why they did it off screen, they don't have the budget. They've used all their budget to do the teeth. But there's something about like this horrendous blood splatter, and you know that they've just beheaded somebody. It was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Kind of visceral, I guess. I don't know. It just put me on edge for no reason. Like, I don't know, I'd rather see the animation of the head like rolling off the neck than just like off screen.
Fair enough. I guess, yeah, because it leaves your imagination, whereas the other one doesn't. So it's kind of
I think that's what it is. And it's like machetes are so violent. Oh, yeah. I'm still kind of grossed out by it, to be honest. Anyway, they are now sort of like in a sort of patch of, it look maybe off the side of the road. We don't really know where they are. John hands them like a bundle of something, and it's got saffron, skunk, cabbage, and trillium. I don't know what the last one is. And it stinks. It's really bad. And it's basically to block the scent, because cabbage smells bad, skunk definitely smells bad. I don't know, saffron's a nice smell, but it is very overpowering. He tells them that vampires mate for life, which, I mean, somehow Dean already knows that, because he says not for eternity. But
I think he's just, again, Buffy.
It could be more. Yeah, you're right. Dean says that the male vampire will come after her and will want to make a trade because she's more valuable than the cult. John wants them to leave after all of this. He's telling them that, you know, you go do your part of the plan, which we don't know what that is yet, but they have their part of the plan and he has his part. And he wants them to get the hell out of the area. And Sam's not having it.
You know, I don't get you. You can't treat us like this.
Like what?
Like children.
You are my children.
Sam is not having it. And it comes back to the same kind of thing we were talking about. And John says that, you know, you're my children and I don't want you to get hurt. And finally, Dean has his moment.
Dad, all due respect, but that's a bunch of crap.
Excuse me?
You know what Sammy and I have been hunting? Hell, you sent us on a few hunting trips yourself. You can't be that worried about keeping us safe.
It's not the same thing, Dean.
Then what is it? Why do you want us out of the big fight?
This demon, it's a bad son of a bitch. I can't make the same moves. I'm worried about keeping you alive.
You mean you can't be as reckless?
Dean
Yes.
has his moment and stands up to John and calls him out on it and says, well, no, look at the stuff that you've made us hunt by ourselves. You obviously are not that worried about our safety. If you didn't believe in us, you wouldn't have made us go hunt.
Exactly. I'm so proud of him. And like the look that Sam and John give each other.
I know.
They
Sam
both
is
didn't
so shocked.
Yeah, they didn't expect him to say anything. I like that Dean finally got it together. Like, come on.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to think about it too. In Faith, Dean was dying, literally dying,
Mm-hmm.
and John didn't make an appearance.
Nope. So it's not about keeping them safe, is it?
No, not at all. It's not about keeping them safe. We don't really know what the reason is because he won't tell anybody.
I mean, I think Dean's right here. It's so he can be more reckless. He can do things that are more dangerous without worrying about putting them in danger because of his actions. But his actions aren't causing them to be in danger while they're out hunting, if that makes sense. I know he sends them some cases, but when they're there, that's ultimately up to them how they deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Where if they're with John, he can do all the, like, he's going to go, he was planning to go and kill, like, however many vampires are in that barn by himself.
Yeah.
You know? So he's doing things that are probably going to get him killed, but I guess he doesn't feel bad about it because he's not involving Sam and Dean, so let's just roll with it. Like,
Yeah. And he
right.
even admits that he doesn't think he's going to survive the demon.
Yeah.
Right? That's how I understood it. I didn't know if he meant he wasn't going to, like, survive the fight with the vampires, but surely he was trying to get out of that because he's trying to get the cult, so...
Yeah. I completely agree. I think he was planning to face the demon alone and was fully expecting to, I don't know, go out in a blaze of glory, you know, killing the demon and himself at the same time. Ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Being a hero.
Yeah. And like...
quote-unquote hero.
You know, when he says that, like, Dean's reaction is like, well, what's going to happen to us if you die? You know? Like, because John's saying that he can't go through it again. He lost Mary, he can't lose Sam and Dean. Like, that would be the end of him, essentially. And Dean's like, well, what about us? What about our feelings if you go off and do this?
Dad, what happens if you die? We could have done something about it. You know, I've been thinking, I think maybe Sammy's right about this one. I think we should do this together. We're stronger as a family, Dad. We just are. You know it.
Dean. We are. I just know it. Like, he says, like, I just know it. Like, Dean knows this. Like, it's something in his, like, very core saying, like, family is everything. We are stronger if we're together. And it's really interesting because sometimes it's, like, and I don't know why, but Supernatural shows over and over again that sometimes it's not true. Like,
yeah,
the times when they're sometimes, like, the strongest is when they're not together. Like, think about Dean in Purgatory.
But no, I do get what you mean. Even when the Mark takes over Dean, and Sam's like hunting by himself, or there's a time when Sam's like the leader of a whole bunch of hunters, like without Dean. They are okay on their own. They actually are.
Yes.
For some reason, I don't even know where that got ingrained in him, to be honest. I mean, maybe it was the whole, like, look after Sammy, like, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That he's like, well, I have to look after him, therefore we have to be together all the time.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think, again, like, so Sam would have left when he was 18. Well, how good of a hunter was he before that? Probably not that good. Because he's still, like, a growing person. Mm-hmm. Like... It's only now that he can really show, like, how good they actually are, being older and stronger and, like, just knowing more about the life. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know.
I don't know where it came from. I think it all goes back to Mary. I've said it before.
Yeah.
But Yeah, this line stuck with me, and I know it's used again later for emotional effects, so it's fine. So John dismisses them, though. He doesn't really say anything to that. He just dismisses them and be like, "That's, it's an order. Just do what I said." Yeah. So
he's back to where he was before. So he's learned nothing.
That's true.
So we're at the vampires, and they are sort of discussing that they can't find them, like they can't find their scent or anything. And then they hear a truck, and one of them's like, "Oh, it's just a truck on the highway." And Luther's like, "Well, Kate's in that truck. I can smell her," basically. And then we see John and Kate in the truck, and they're being followed. Like you can see the headlights in the rear view. And then it cuts to the barn, and there's one vampire there that's just sort of hanging around. And then he hears a noise and goes to check out like where they had entered before.
Yeah.
And then Dean just goes, "Boo." It was great. It was great. There were some funny moments in this episode. As horrible as this episode is, there was some good. And it's all Dean. It's always Dean. John's continued being chased, but then suddenly there's no lights in the rear view. So he thinks, I don't know if he thought he got away, but I don't know, he continues driving. And then we see all the vampires. I really like the way that they did the eyes in this. And I don't think they do this again for the vampires.
No, I don't think so.
Because they kind of have like cat eyes in that, like when the light hits the eyes, it reflects.
Yeah, as if they can see in the dark. But they have those reflective retinas. Yeah.
So John gets out of the car with Kate. There was something weird about him calling Kate sweetheart. I don't know. It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, ugh.
Like anybody calling me sweetheart just rubbed me the wrong way. So maybe it's just that.
Yeah, I think so.
I just like recoil from that now.
Luther and Kate have like, "Are you okay, hon?" Basically. Yeah, whatever. And they do the exchange, and Luther puts the gun in between them, and John walks over, picks up the gun, but Kate manages to slip free and like throws him over the truck.
Yeah, so he's gone through, I think, did he go through he looked like he like hit the windscreen. There's like glass everywhere. Anyway, like luckily Sam and Dean come to the rescue. They're shooting crossbow bolts at the vampires, and Dean grabs a machete, and then Luther grabs Sam. As he grabs Sam, like, Dean hesitates, and he puts down the machete.
Well, because Luther says that if you don't put it down, I'm going to break his neck.
Exactly. So, stronger together, are you, Dean? No, so okay, so it's fine. And then we see Luther says here, and I think this is where I kind of going with that, like, good and evil thinking.
You people, why can't you just leave us alone? We have as much right to live as you do.
I don't think so.
And I kind of get it, but at the same time, you are kidnapping people off the road.
Yeah, that's the issue right there. It's like, and you forcefully changed Jenny. Like, she didn't want to be a vampire. You assaulted her.
Like,
grossly.
And I think that if they'd shown any kind of maybe more empathetic moments with the vampires, that would have had more weight. But it didn't, because you automatically think, okay, yeah, it's kind of tough that they're getting killed, but how many people have they killed, you know?
Right, exactly. And they're keeping their humans in cages.
Exactly. So John says, like, I don't think so, and shoots him with the Colt. And I thought it was really interesting how Luther died. Like, he looks surprised that it, because obviously, like, vampires think they can't die from gunshots, so he would be surprised. But it kind of went like blue, and his like forehead went all weird and black. I don't remember. I might just be misremembering, but I don't remember the Colt having that effect on things.
Yeah, I don't remember either. It was very cool. Like, it kind of went like electric too, because you sort of saw his skull for a second.
Yeah, it looked kind of like Angel Grace.
It did. It absolutely did. It looked like he got stabbed by an angel blade.
Yeah, it did. So it was great. Like, it was a cool effect. And then I wrote 6 bullets left, maybe. I don't know if the other one is about now. So I'm going to say 5 plus 1, I guess. 5 in the chamber, 1's maybe somewhere. But Kate and Jenny get away. Like, Jenny comes and grabs Kate and pulls her into a car and they drive off. And John kind of smiles. I guess that's because he knows the gun works, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy though.
Yeah, it's almost like...
I thought it was a little
creepy. So, back at the cabin, they're kind of talking. And John brings up, like, you ignored a direct order. And, like, they're back to, like, yes, sir. But, well, Sam is.
You ignored a direct order back there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, but we saved your ass.
Dean is fully like, we saved your ass. And I was like, ooh. I wrote, ooh.
But, like, Sam's face, he, like, proper, like, looks at Dean like, what the hell was that? It was amazing.
And then John agrees with him, like, you're right. And I was like, what? What's going on? I forgot about this scene.
This is also where I wrote, Dean's personality's back.
Yes.
Like, he's come back. He's back to being Dean.
Mm-hmm.
Back to being a smartass.
Exactly. Like, yeah. Well done, Dean. You made it. You made it. You made it through this episode.
Well, so I'm wondering if, like, John's change of heart came from Dean's, like, refusal to follow orders.
Mm. Like, maybe maybe if Dean's talking back, you've pushed too far. That's the canary in the mine shaft. Dean talking back. I don't know. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was the tipping point. I think it didn't matter what Sam said because he's used to butting heads with Sam all the time. But when Dean finally turns around, like, actually, no, you're being an ass. Like, oh, I have pushed it too far. Like, I should explain this more seriousness. Which I feel bad for Sam that that's the case because it's really not listened to.
Yeah, that's true.
But, so John says, like, he agrees and he says that they're stronger together and then kind of says, like, we're going together. And the music.
But I guess we are stronger as a family. So, we go after this damn thing. Together.
Yes, sir.
Because it was like the end credit music over the end of this conversation. And I imagine it was the same with the Netflix. It felt like it was building to something. It was really exciting and I did enjoy it.
It was. The only thing though is that they kind of end the episode on like a unison, like they say something at the same time. But I don't like the fact it was yes sir. I mean the way that they said it was definitely less of a like we're taking orders and rather like a I guess more of like an excited tone if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't like it was a yes sir that they finished on. But
I guess they're on board now, right? The plan.
Yeah.
And Sam's getting what he wants. They're going together. Dean's getting what he wants. They're all together. John's given a concession and said, "Fine, we're good to go."
I guess this also hunting together in this way. This is the first time they've actually hunted together.
Yeah, that's true.
With Shadow, it was more like they were surprise attacked. And there wasn't really anything they could do about it at that point, apart from like tuck tail and run. But this is the first time that he's actually seen them sort of think for themselves, because this is what like they didn't really make too clear as to what their part of the plan was. Was it that part of the plan to go to the barn and rescue those people, or was it like they were supposed to just cover themselves with this stinky dust and leave?
I think they were supposed to go to the barn, save those people, and go. I think that was it.
Okay.
So they were just supposed to go and then leave John to do whatever John was doing. But then they decided to go back him up. So I guess they've shown John that they're capable.
Yeah, because I mean they took out some vampires, and with them being a distraction, he managed to kill the leader.
Exactly. So I think he's realised that it and also John nearly failed, right? If they hadn't turned up, he definitely would have got. He would have got. So
absolutely,
I think he's realised that he needs the backup at least as well. So yeah, I can't believe we're going into the final 2 episodes this season.
I know. This is crazy.
Yeah,
it's absolutely crazy. And honestly, like we've experienced it today. It's not helping.
No. So next episode for us is
it is Salvation.
Salvation. Oh, I mean, like I said, I think the next 2 episodes are kind of a 2-parter, aren't they? So
yeah,
we'll do them as separate episodes, but I am very excited for the season 1 finale.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Yeah,
It's gonna be good. All right. Well, we have somehow managed to end up in a bog in Purgatory this week, and we are fully stuck. We are fully stuck right where we are. We're not getting anywhere. We'll see what happens next time.
Bye.
Bye.